Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Open Roads. I play it on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Series S, Xbox One, PS5, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. So let's get into the story. You play as Tessa, and as the game opens up, well, Tessa and her mom are cleaning out her grandma's house. Tessa and Opal had moved in order to help their grandma in her old age, and well, she unfortunately passed, and it's time for them to pack up, move out, and, continue on with their lives. But while packing up, they discover something interesting that could lead to some startling family revelations. This kicks off their road trip. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed the storytelling. It's kind of interesting how some of the past stuff parallels the present stuff in this game. The stuff you're learning about translates from the 1960s to the early 2000s when this game takes place. But I also just loved the relationship between Opal and Tessa, and them not just learning about Tessa's past, but them exploring each other's past, essentially. Their relationship grows and changes as a mother and daughter's relationship is prone to do as they both grow. And overall, I just really enjoyed the storytelling. I think they did a good job. Not entirely surprising coming from Annapurna Interactive. I think they've made some fantastic games. But let's move forward onto the audio, and I really love the soundtrack of this game. I think all of it does a great job, whether it's the music on the radio or the music in the background. I think it adds a lot to the experience. As for the sound effects, they're good enough. This isn't a AAA game, so you don't necessarily have the same standards there, but I think they are good, except for I did notice that when you're opening a lot of cabinets, there's like zero noise, which in real life, if you've got a well-lubricated cabinet, it's not gonna make a lot of noise, but we're used to it in video games that there's generally a noise when you open pretty much anything, so it was kind of weird that there wasn't always a noise there, but there was for drawers. But let's get on to the star of the audio, and that is the voiceover work. Carrie Russell and Caitlin Dever voice Opal and Tessa, and they do an amazing job. They really hit every note just so perfectly. There wasn't a single point in time, at least in my playthrough, there are dialogue options that I did not choose, but every dialogue option I chose, every bit of dialogue and interaction between the two of them, I thought was phenomenal. Saying that they brought these characters to life really is a truth. And in a game where it's all about story, having great voiceover work really matters. So let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot. And this, as I mentioned, is by Annapurna Interactive, and it's very narrative driven. It's what I love to call an interactive narrative. Everything you do is not about gameplay. All the gameplay, everything is about furthering the story. It is first person. You will be exploring different areas, finding notes, finding items. Some of them will trigger conversations, some of them won't. Some will trigger Tessa's inner thoughts, some of them won't. But it is fun, and it gives you an insight into both the characters, all the characters, including, Helen, who is the dead grandma. I really appreciate, I love that world building in that sense when there's such a good story going on and you want to know more about the characters. So exploring every drawer, every cabinet, finding all the items you possibly can to trigger anything you can is actually really enjoyable in this experience. I also just love some of the other fun character things, like they reference the movie Clue, which I think more people should know about and watch. The gameplay isn't crazy in depth, which is true of a lot of these games, but it does exactly what it needs to, and that is get you through the story because, that's the core of this. Let's get into the controls, and it's first person, and it's not very complex. There's a lot of walking around and a lot of looking around, and then you click a button occasionally to search through things and pick up items and trigger conversations, etc. Unfortunately, the controls are also one of the biggest problems in this game, because while most of them are fine, the camera is just awful. Like when it's working fine, it works fine, but it does a lot of weird shit. You'll be trying to point it at something and it'll just twitch away all on its own. It'll start to drift. It'll really just kind of fly around sometimes and just twitch about. It's awful, honestly. It really does hurt. Because looking around is a key thing, and when you're trying to pick up an item and the camera just twitches off of it for no fucking reason or just starts drifting away when you just put your cursor over it, that's a problem. Let's get on to the graphics and visuals, and as I mentioned earlier, this is not a AAA title, so you're not getting AAA graphics, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They have their own unique visual style in this game. When you're in the cutscenes or the dialogues between characters, you get to see this very hand-drawn art style of each of the characters. And I will say there could be more in-depth animation there, because there are definitely times where there are lines being said and mouths are not moving, and I think, you know, it would go a step to do that fully. But you do get the expressions you need to feel the emotions that you are meant to feel during the dialogues. The drawings that are being presented to you do put that across, and the animations that are there give the characters a little extra life. They could have just gone a bit further with it, is what I'm saying. As for the rest of the time in the world, you're not exploring necessarily hand-drawn, but it is a very stylized world where nothing is meant to be hyper-realistic. And in a world like that, you can get away with things not looking 100% real because it's not meant to look 100% real. It's not meant to have that level of detail to try and look like that. There's enough detail in everything, though, that you know exactly what you're meant to be looking at. Nothing's a fucking mystery. And while graphically it's not the most mind-shattering game, it works very well and it looks good for what it's trying to be, and it pulls off exactly what it's clearly trying to be. The last thing I want to cover before getting into the wrap-up is this game could run a bit smoother. There were times where I was moving my camera around, and like I would warp to a location practically, as well as my camera was twitching around. And given that this isn't the most demanding thing I've ever played, I think it should absolutely be running smoother than it is. Okay, so to get into the wrap-up, yes, I have complaints with this game, but I think it's a very good story. Overall, I am very happy that I played it. It's also a pretty short experience, and for the price tag, I think it's fully worth it. I do hope for some patching to make it run more smoothly, but I don't have any problem recommending this game to folks who love interactive narratives. Okay, in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, since Caitlin Dever is in this, what do you think about her being cast as Abby in The Last of Us Season 2? Honestly, I don't think she has enough years to get as built as Abby. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.